go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. It's kind of a light crowd, but I know it's right before the holidays. I'd like to welcome everybody to Keystroke Live. While I'm making the presentation, I'm going to put everybody on mute just so there's no background noise interfering with everybody. And then we will, I'll ask for questions as we go along. Today we're doing end of the year procedures. We call this part 2, and it's pretty much on variance. Dave did a presentation last week on end of year procedures, talking about, making sure you have a backup and that sort of thing. One of the big things a lot of businesses do at the end of the year or the beginning of the year is do their inventory counts. So that's what we're going to talk about. Remember, Keystroke Live is nearly every Wednesday, same time, same place, same login information. Usually the first Wednesday of each month is Michael Gebb. And just so you know, with the holidays coming up, we will not have a Keystroke Live for the next 2 weeks. So the next one will probably be Michael Gebb, since that will be the first Wednesday of January. So let's talk about what variance is all about. It's pretty much a way to adjust your quantity on hand for your inventory. Primarily, you're going to do a physical count, whether you count everything in the store, a certain department, a certain set of shelves or aisles. It's also a great way to document theft or breakage or spoilage of your goods. You got a bunch of things that are going bad or that are broken. There's ways to track that in Keystroke. It can be used for purchasing, but it really isn't recommended. Your purchase module is really the best way to track your purchasing. The documentation available for variance includes reports in the variance module, and then it can also link to your accounting software if you have our accounting link. So it can adjust the value of your inventory based on your count. Keystroke does have a great step-by-step help file to give you an overview of how you want to do your variance. The real key thing is between the time you do your count and the time you put an item on the variance, or vice versa, maybe you're going to put the item on the variance and do your count, you really don't want any stock movement, any sales or purchases of that time. Between that time. After that, it's okay to go ahead and sell or purchase the item. Another great little feature of the variance, which is kind of nice, since Keystroke does real-time inventory, you can do a variance and post a snapshot of your inventory, which will always be available by report of what it is at the time you do it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a great way to have it documented in Keystroke. You can do it at the end of the month, at the end of the year. Variance has a lot of parameters. And before you start doing any variance, you want to review these, make sure they're set up appropriately for your business application or your customer's business application. There's a parameter to include allocated or layaway in the quantity on hand field. And I'm going to show you all of this in Keystroke once we kind of go through this. You can choose to have the cost of your variance be either the last cost or the average cost. You can have Keystroke default to every time you put in an item. Do you want it to default to just one, or do you want it to go over to the quantity field and allow you to type something in? There's parameters for doing that. The variance can Make sure serial numbers match your quantity on hands. If you have a serialized item, optimally, if you have 8 items in stock, you want 8 serial numbers. So it will check that. If you don't really want to deal with the warning messages with the serial numbers and the serialized items, you can disable that warning. That's pretty much up to you. But it's always a good idea to check if you do a lot of serialized items to make sure the items you do have in stock, you do have that many serial numbers in connected with that item. There's a parameter on how do you want the variance to act when you put the same item on there again. Especially when you're doing a large variance. You may forget that you put your green widget on there. Or maybe you've got several people counting in different areas of the store, and you've got green widgets on the end cap by the front entrance, but it's also down aisle 4. So you might have 2 different people counting them, and you probably want to merge those quantities together. There's also a parameter to post items with 0 variance. What a 0 variance means, Keystroke says you have 12 items. You go out there, you count 12 items. The variance is the difference between those. I recommend always posting items with 0 variance because it does update the inventory record that says, yes, in fact, on this day, I counted this item and there was 0 variance. So Keystroke said I had 12, I counted 12, so it gives you a record that at least it was counted. There is a new parameter in version 8 to check open variances on post. And let me tell you the big reason for this. You might have 2 or 3 laptops with various people going throughout the store counting items. Let's go back to our green widgets. If you're counting items just based on a section of the store, the person who's counting aisle 3 on your green widget might come up with 20. The person that's counting with a different laptop in a different session of the variance might count 5 on the end cap by the front door. Well, if you have that same item on 2 different variances, whichever one gets posted last is going to win. So it's really not a good idea at all to have the same item on 2 different variances in progress. So what Keystroke is, what we've added in version 8 is a parameter to check other open variances when you post it. And I'll try to show you how that works, but it's easy enough to figure out. When you're in the variance module, there is a variance title or description. That's a great little, I don't know, it's like 30, 40 characters that you can put in. I counted my book department on this day. Or this is dairy spoilage. Or this is breakage because you had a shelf fall over, heaven forbid. So that gives you a great way to remind yourself later what this particular variance was about. Or it might have been a full inventory count of everything in your store. Keystroke has an autofill function that allows you to have Keystroke automatically enter all of your line items. Maybe you just want to fill in everything in a particular department or category or location or any other parameter on the inventory record. You can, so rather than individually putting them in one at a time, at the time you put that item on a variance, it basically says, right now Keystroke has this quantity. Now an unposted variance is a variance in progress, where you're entering in count numbers manually, or you might have various data collectors that you're updating and importing additional count information into a variance. You do want to save that regularly. If your network goes down, if you have a power outage and your battery backup is dead, you're going to lose any information that you've put in there since your last save. So save it regularly. There's also a difference between saving and posting the variance. Saving it just saves your work thus far. It does nothing to change your quantity on hands. All it is a way to have that record so you can go back to it at a later time. Posting it actually updates your quantity on hand based on the difference between what Keystroke thinks you have and what you have counted, or what we call the variance number. Now, when you go to post a variance, if there's items on that variance that you have not put a count in, you have several choices. You can remove that item from the variance. You didn't count it. You don't know where it is or whether you have it, or maybe it's just a partial variance. It's up to you. You can set that item to 0. That's very common. You know, you might have a lot of things in your inventory and you've counted the entire store, but there's a line that says red widget. Well, nobody counted any red widgets. So even though Keystroke says you have 5, you can say set it to 0. I didn't find any, I didn't count any, it must be 0. You can choose to leave the quantity, physical quantity, blank. That's used for the snapshot I was mentioning, where you can autofill a variance with all of your inventory items and just post it, leaving the quantity counted blank. And that basically just gives you a snapshot of what Keystroke says you have without changing any of your quantities. Or if you get that message, you can cancel, you can go back, you can try to find the item. So I'd like to take a look at Keystroke and kind of show you what this is all about. You access the Variance module from Database Manager. So I'm already in the Database Manager. You go to the Special menu and you choose Variance. When you first go into a variance, it's going to ask you for a session ID number. That is generally going to be based on the register number of the computer that you're using. So I'm register 1, so I'm going to load a saved or open variance on register 1. Now, right now, I don't have one. No problem. Let's take a look at some of our parameters. This is especially important when you are first getting familiar with the variance module. You can choose what you want your entry field to be. All of our index fields are available for how you want to enter the item. Works the same way in sales if you want to have alternate search, so you can have it on product code, but if your alternate search is stock number, it'll also look at that. These are all the other parameters I was talking about. Do you want to include your allocated quantity and your quantity on hand, or your layaway quantity and quantity on hand? If you use sales orders and layaways, think about how you handle those in the store. If you have a sales order or a layaway for something, do you physically take that item or items, put it in a special location so no one else can sell it, and save it for the customer? If you do that, when you're doing your counts, are you going to count those items, or are you just going to leave them there? Though all of that kind of combines as to whether or not you're going to include this quantity. If you're going to count those items, then you want to include that allocated and layaway quantity in your quantity on hand. If you want to use last cost instead of average cost, you can do that. These are your default or your confirmed to. The first one, you put in an item, it's going to automatically go to 1. If you're carrying around a laptop with a scanner and you're scan, you just want it to be 1. You don't want it to stop. And especially when you're scanning, that's where your merge same items comes in. If you're scanning, doing something like that, you probably don't want any messages, no beep, just automatically merge the line. So you scan, it's going to put 1. You scan another of the same item, it's going to update it to 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're manually at your keyboard putting things in, if you have a big long list, having this merge same items display a message and automatically go to that line, it makes it a whole lot easier. If you've got thousands of items on your variance and you're working from count sheets and you're looking for that green widget, you could just type in the stock number or the product code at the very bottom of the variance. With display message, it's going to give you a message. This item is on this line. Do you want to go to it? You click yes, and then you can add to it. So it's a very helpful feature. Here's the disable serial numbers I talked about. And check open posts on, or open variances on post. I'm going to kind of give you a little idea of how that works since this is something new in version 8. We have a choice where it never checks it. That could be a problem if you routinely have multiple variances sessions going on at the same time. You can have it warn you only, or you can have it merge in the items from the other variance. I'm going to show you this one. So we're going to merge the same items. We do want to post items with 0 variance. And like a lot of our modules, we do have various detail box choices, which I'm not going to get into right now. Once you have your parameters checked, I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to do books. So I'm going to count all my books today. And I want to autofill all my books. So let's go to the special menu. Go to autofill. Notice on autofill, bulk and service items are marked as 0, which means if you have items that are marked as bulk or service and these zeros are here, it won't put these items on your variance. You can choose to put them there by deleting what's there. You can only do bulk and service by putting a 1 there. I know my books aren't bulk or service, but I do know all my books are in my book department. You can tell this is a search screen. Once you've put your search, if you want to put absolutely everything, make sure all of this is blank, including bulk or service. But let's just put the books in. I'm going to hit F10. My autofill is complete. I added 8 line items. Now at this point, it might be a good time to save it. So I'm going to go to the variance menu and save. Excuse me for a moment. Okay, I've counted a few of my books. I've got 4 of this one. I've got 6 of this one. This one's okay. This one's okay. This one I have 8. This one I have 0. That means it's been a popular book and has probably grown some legs. And Curious George, I might only have one. And Huck Finn's a pretty popular one as well. So that's what I've counted. But maybe I want to double check. So I'm just going to save this variance for right now. But to simulate having a variance going on another computer, I'm going to go to my session ID and I'm going to start a new variance for register 2. Ask me if I want to save the changes. I already have, but I'll save them again. So maybe this variance, I'm counting books. So let's find, here's A Wrinkle in Time. Here's one of my books. Maybe I'm just doing a spot check. I'm spot checking A Wrinkle in Time. And I go out there and I only find one. And I go to try to post this variance. Because of that new parameter, I get a warning. I have another open variance with these same line items. So based on the current settings, it says VAR1, which is session 1 of my variance, has that item. And I set it to merge. I can view the items. So it says I have 5, my physical is 1, and my new physical is going to be 5 because I have another register. Remember that other variance, I counted 4. So do I really have 5? Well, I don't know. Let's close that. If we want to merge, it's going to take that item, A Wrinkle in Time, off the other variance and put it on this one. So look, my physical's now 5. Now I can post it. It's not going to make any changes, remember, because it'll mark it that it's been counted, but my variance, my difference between what's been counted in session 1 and session 2 is 5. So I'm just going to post this. So let's go back and take a look at my first session 1. Remember I had 8 line items? Notice A Wrinkle in Time is not there. So that's a great new feature in version 8, especially if you have a large store and you've got a lot of different people counting, actually using Keystroke with a tablet or a laptop, something like that. So let's go back and review a little bit here. Variance, we're going to adjust the quantity on hand for inventory. There's reports. I didn't show you that. Let me show you that real quick. There's a lot of different choices like our reports. It is in the report menu in your variance module. You can see you're in variance by looking at the status bar. You can go to the reports. You can do a report on what is on the screen or on past transactions, which will group each variance together, or a history which will show this item, I counted this day on this variance, this day on this variance. There's lots of choices in these. There is a great step-by-step help file. I'm not going to go into that. Let me show you very briefly a snapshot of your inventory. That's another great feature that I don't think is used very much. So let's go back to that. We're going to go ahead and post this variance. And we're going to start a new one. I just want to take a snapshot of absolutely everything's in my store, including my bulk items and my service items. everything here is blank. We're going to autofill. Whoops, that didn't work with my service items. I'm not going to worry about it right now. But this tells me everything that Keystroke says I have. So I'm going to name this snapshot, and I'm just going to post it. Remember the messages, unconfirmed line items. I'm just going to leave this blank. The quantities aren't changing. It's just a snapshot of what Keystroke says I have. So it's going to be saved. The items won't be changed. Proceed with posting. Yes. Okay, what's great about this, I can go back and I can edit this because I've done several variances today, so I don't want all of that. I can do a report on my displayed variance, and I want to know what the value of my inventory was on this day when I took this snapshot. I do this form. I'm going to print it to the screen. And right here, it tells me with every item, this is what Keystroke says I have. It's not going to do any totals, but we do have other forms that you can use. You can do what your cost total is based on your quantity on hand. So that's a great feature. I'd like to open this up for questions. There's a lot of information here. So anybody, questions on the variance module or any of these features that we've talked about? Can you guys hear me?
I think you did a great job. That's why I don't have any questions.
Okay. Well, you can always give me a call if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I hope you have a great holiday season. Remember, the next couple of weeks, there's no Keystroke Live. So everybody enjoy yourselves. Be safe, and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.